Hi, you guys like candy? Because I sure do. I love candy. I like chocolate, specifically dark chocolate. I think most people are like milk chocolate people. But anyway, here we have ourselves a problem, and it says in Sichua's candy store, we only have 3/4 pound size boxes to hold our delicious chocolates. What does that mean? Hmm. Think about that. We only have 3/4 pound size boxes to hold our delicious chocolates. So that means how much can we actually fill in one box? And I hope you said 3/4 of a pound. Okay. Um, so how many boxes do we need if a customer buys 6 pounds of chocolate? I want to know who's buying 6 pounds of chocolate, and I want to go to that party. Okay, so let's start there. So here's what we got. Right, we have 3/4 pound boxes, and we have 6 pounds of chocolate to distribute between um, all of those 3/4 pound boxes. So if I said to you, what operation is that asking us to use here? So I'm taking 6 pounds of chocolate and I'm distributing it to 3/4 pound size boxes. And when I distribute things evenly, I'm almost, what was that word? That's right. I'm dividing them. Beautiful. So what we're literally asking you for is to take six and divide that by 3/4. Okay. Now, a cool way to take a look at that, like, because now you're like, oh my God, we have a fraction. Don't be scared. Fractions are our friends. We love them. I wear a 10 and a half shoe size. If we didn't have fractions, my shoes would either be too big or too small. So we have to look at that. So anyway, we have 6 divided by 3/4. So what I want you to look at this is, here's your 6 pounds of chocolate, and we have to figure out how much is going to go into one box. Okay. So because the boxes cover 3/4 of a pound, that means that we're talking about fourths. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to break each one of these into fourths. All right. So, in order to break it into fourths, it's much easier to divide it into halves first, right? And then go that away. Same thing here. Same thing here. Oh, I don't like what I did there. I have to erase that. I have OCD, you guys. Darn it, as you probably well know now. Okay, that's not exactly a half. So let's go over here. You like the little eraser button, right? And then over there, and then this over here, and then the same thing here. So we're just going to divide each one of these into fourths, all right? Because we're trying to figure out how much candy to fill, how much candy we can pretty much fill into those slots, okay? So here's how I like to look at it, right? We're looking at this. So each one of these represents 1/4 of a pound. So this is a quarter. Whoops. That's a quarter. That's a quarter. So if you look at this, this is actually, this amount of chocolate will go into, I hope you're all saying, one box, okay? So because this is 3/4. So I like to go over here and I'm like, okay, so this right here covers one box. All right. So now if I go over here, then I have this quarter, and that quarter. That's another 3/4. So that is yet another box that the chocolate's gonna go into, right? I'm gonna use different marking so I don't get confused. There's my next 3/4, okay? So there's my next 3/4. That's another box, okay? And then over here, I got this one right over here, another three right here, check, 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 and that's one box right there, right? Now, if you look up top, do you think the same thing is going to happen down in the bottom? So this is 3 pounds, right? So if you look at this, this is 3 pounds of chocolate. How many boxes do we need to fill up 3 pounds of chocolate? And I hope you're saying we need 4 boxes for 3 pounds of chocolate, right? 3 pounds of chocolate. So now I got a question for you. If that's 3 pounds, right? That means that we need another, I hope you guys are saying, yeah, because this is going to be one box here, one box here, but oh my goodness, one box here and one box there. So we should have one, 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 and one. So that means we need a total of how many boxes? I hope you guys are saying 8 boxes will cover us for 6 pounds of chocolate, okay? Of chocolate. All right, so 8 boxes. So think about that. So we need 8 boxes to fill 6 pounds of chocolate because each box represents 3/4 of a pound. So this right here is a 3/4 of a pound here, this one here. So if we take the chocolate and we're filling the chocolate up, that's another 3/4. This one over here, that's another 3/4, and so forth. Come on, yellow, come on, yellow. And it turns out that we need a total of 8 of them. So for whoever's coming in to buy this chocolate, it's freaking delicious. So I'm going to hit pause and we're going to move on to the next one. Hi. There are 3 questions that you'll notice I have right up here. And here, let's see. If each person eats half a big chocolate chip cookie, you know those big giant ones, how many cookies do 6 people eat? Let's look at number 2. To share big chocolate chip cookies fairly among 6 people, how much does each person have? To share 3 big chocolate chip cookies fairly, with each person getting half a cookie, how many people can share? Am I not, like, if you look at those questions, hit pause and ask yourself, go get the answers to them and meet me back here. Because what I want you to recognize is something interesting. And that is, I'm asking you the same question, but in a different way. Think about that, right? So let's go over to the first, let's go over to the first one. I'm going to change my pretty color too. I keep forgetting I have my pretty pen here. Oh. Okay, I'm just going to leave that. That's a faux pas, but who cares? Okay, so it says if each person eats half of a big chocolate chip cookie, how many cookies do 6 people eat, right? So if I have my cookies, my 3 cookies, right? Yes, I gave you the answer. I got to start this over. I'll edit this. It's okay. So let me go back here. I'm going to pause. Hi. So let's take a look. I posted 3 problems up here, just interestingly enough. And of course, it entails food because this is who I am. Okay. So it says if each person eats half a big chocolate chip cookie, how many cookies do 6 people eat? Okay. To share big chocolate chip cookies fairly among 6 people, how much does each person share? To share 3 big chocolate chip cookies fairly with each person getting half a cookie, how many people can share? Okay, so let's go back up to A. And it says if each person eats half of a big chocolate chip cookie, how many cookies do 6 people eat? So if you have you have 6 people there and they're eating half a cookie, right? That means then that 2 people have actually eaten how many cookies, right? So this is 2 people have eaten 2 cookies. So these 2 halves equal, that's 1 cookie. Looks like a face, doesn't it? So that's 1, right? So that's 1 of them. And then, so that means that we have 6, so there's 6 people, so there's 4 other ones. So that means then that there's half a cookie here, half a cookie. So there's another hole right there. So that's 2. And then another half a cookie, another half a cookie. So that's 3. So I'm assuming that there are 3 big delicious cookies to go amongst everybody, right? So how did I get that? So how did I get that? What did I do? I technically did, how would we get 3? Because we had 6 people and there's half a cookies, right? So in order for us to get that, it would be 6 times 1/2, right? Because half of 6 is 3. Now it says to share a big chocolate chip cookies fairly among 6 people, how much does each person have? I think I forgot something important there, and now I have to go back again. I can't. So it should actually read pause. That's what okay, just remember when you're editing this to get rid of the stuff before that. Okay, hi. So here we go. Let's look at the 3 questions. I'd like you to hit pause or actually read it with me if you'd like. And I have 3 different questions. So in the first question, it says, if each person eats half of a big chocolate chip cookie, how many cookies do 6 people eat? You notice it's always about food because I just love my food. And then for number 2, it says to share 3 big chocolate chip cookies fairly among 6 people, how much does each person have? And to share 3 big chocolate chip cookies fairly with each person getting half a cookie, how many people can share? Okay. Do these feel like they're similar type questions to you guys? Like it feels like they're talking about the same kind of situation. It's just that they're worded a little differently, right? A little differently. So if I go back up and let's look at it again and hit pause and reread them and think about how you're going to go about solving them, because that's always what it is. Because me, I'm a big picture person. I like to draw pictures or actually have tactile things in my hands or whatever. But I'm going to go draw. And I'm going to do an orange one because that's as close to the color cookie as we can. So if each person eats half of a big chocolate chip cookie, how many cookies do 6 people eat? So each person eats half a cookie, right? So one person eats half a cookie, the other person eats half a cookie. So that means that 2 people, right? So 2 people eat one whole cookie. Would you agree with that? And then, because see what I'm doing, I'm like, all right, half a cookie, right? And that's, another cookie. So that's two. And then over here, I have a half a cookie, and a half a cookie gives me a whole cookie. So I'm going to say it's got to be three cookies, right? It's got to be three cookies. So now I'm going to ask you guys, mathematically, how do we get three cookies? How do we get it? Because here's the thing. It says if each person eats half a big chocolate chip cookie, how many cookies do six people eat, right? So my thing is that I'm thinking, I have six people, each one eats half. How many cookies do they actually eat between the six of them? Yes. So to me, I'm thinking 6 times 1/2, right? And think of that. 6 times a half. What does that mean? So that's basically saying what's half a 6, right? What's half a 6? And hopefully in your little brain, you're like, oh, it's 3. Okay. Number 2, it says to share 3 big chocolate chip cookies fairly among 6 people. How much does each person have? Right? So you're taking 3 cookies, right? And you have 6 people. So if you want to do that, that means that you have to divide your cookies into halves, yes? So it says to share 3 big chocolate chip cookies fairly among 6 people. How much does each person have? So now for this one, what operation are you guys actually thinking of, right? How am I going to get a half there, right? And so you take what? You take 3 cookies, right? And you're dividing it by 6 people. So each person gets a half. That's very good. So that's a division right there, okay? So now number 3, it says to share 3 big chocolate chip cookies fairly with each person getting half a cookie. How many people can share? Listen, what an interesting way to phrase this question. It says 3 big chocolate chip cookies are being shared fairly where each person gets a half. So you are taking 3 big cookies, right? And you are dividing them into halves. You're dividing them evenly into halves, and that is going to get you 6 people. So it's saying that when you take 3 and you divide it into halves, right, which over here, right, and you're dividing it into halves, you would literally get 6. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what's interesting is that this diagram is actually a helpful hand to this guy right over here. So it says to share 3 big chocolate chip cookies fairly with each person getting half a cookie, how many people can share? So you're taking 3 cookies and you're dividing it into halves, right? You're dividing it into halves, and when you divide it into halves, you actually wind up with 6. So, 3 divided by a half is equal to 6. So another way to look at it is right over here, because here it is. You have a half, a half, a half, a half, a half, a half, and there are 6 halves that will give you a 3. Isn't that cool? And we'll talk about, how many of you were looking at this and you're saying to yourselves, gee, that's interesting. 3 divided by a half is equal to 6. Right? Because in your mind, how many of you see a 3 and a 2 and you're like, wow, isn't that interesting? Yes, it is super interesting. I'm a super fan of that. So to me, I'm like, what does that mean? What does that mean? How does that get me here? Right? Because it almost feels like 3 times 2 is equal to 6, doesn't it? Right? Because we all know 3 times 2 is equal to 6. So if I look at this as something so profoundly interesting, if I do 3 divided by a half, I get 6. If I do 3 times 2, I get 6. If I said to you, what is the relationship between these two numbers? It's a very beautiful and interesting relationship, because if I technically look at this looks like, this is, if I divide by a half, it's the same thing as multiplying by 2, right? So if I divide by a third, so if I take like 6 and I divide it by a third, that would be the same thing as doing 6 times 3. I just want you guys to think about, what is the relationship between this pretty guy here and that pretty guy there? I just need you to think about that for a while.